Good morning and welcome to this month's vlog hot for crafting together with all brands. The theme this month is shopping your stash, and so we're going to be making these little toolboxes from our 12 by 12 coloured card, our printed papers and printed ephemera. So you want to gather your supplies and join me as we make this project. So we're going to start with our 12 by 12 sheet and we're going to cut it down at 6 inches so that we end up with two long thin pieces. So you can use a trimmer or a guillotine for this, whichever you find easiest. So line it up on the 6-inch mark and then we can cut that down. So we're going to set to one side one of the strips of card, and those can make another toolbox later or something else. And next we need to score our first piece of card. Now, depending on the size of your scoreboard, you can either line it up on your scoreboard and score at 6 inches, or you can just fold your card in half. Now, if you are working with a single-sided card, you want the side of the card that you want to the outside actually facing inwards on this first fold. This is because our other folds are actually going to be wrapping round to the outside. So make sure that that good side is facing inside of your fold so that it can wrap round. So if you're working with double-sided paper that has two patterns, decide which one you want on the inside and which one you want on the outside. Then fold and burnish that fold with a bone folder. Okay, so open up your card, and instead of placing it so that your fold is a mountain, we're going to flip it over so that it is a valley, just because of how we want the folds to wrap around. From each end, we're going to score our card at 1¼ inches and 2½, and we're going to repeat that at both ends. Close up your card and make sure that both score lines line up accurately. This will mean that your box is then symmetrical. Next we need to score lengthwise. So the best way to do this is when you need to do the second part of your fold is actually put your fold line up to the top edge of your scoreboard and then extend that fold down. So you're going to score it once at the top, lift up the top section, place the fold against the top edge and continue that score line down. So now we need to fold and burnish all of our folds, but we're going to be working away from the fold of the valley so that it wraps around the back. You also want to cut the tabs so that you can fold these round easily to form your box. So you want to cut at the score lines up to that first lengthwise score line to create your tabs. You then need to take out a little bit of excess just to help everything fold round neatly. Okay, so we want to work our way round and you want to be accurate to your score line as well. If you don't cut quite far enough, you're going to get kind of a rounded corner, and likewise, if you cut too far, you can end up with a little bit of a gap going into that corner edge, particularly if you don't remove enough waste. So to start with, I'm going along the score lines themselves, and then we can work on the individual tabs. So our main tab here is going to be the side of our toolbox. So we can fold that back. And what we want to do is we want to create a little V in that as well, but we'll show that in a minute. So fold all these tabs over. And you don't need to burnish it at this point, but we will do eventually. It's mainly so that we can get access into that centre tab on each side. So here you want to put a little V notch in there. The easiest way to do this is to line up your score line at 3 inches and then create a little notch at 1¼ inch either side of that 3-inch mark. That way we know that our little V's are going to be at the correct angle. If you wanted to have it more slanted, you can do that too. But it's a good starting point. You then want to cut from those points up towards that centre line on the first score. If you want to be ultra accurate, you can use a knife and metal ruler just to make sure that you get an absolutely straight line. But these two panels are actually going to stick to each other eventually, so then you can always just straighten that up if needed. Okay, so you should now have something that looks like this. And then we want to glue these two panels together. And you can use the thin end if you want, but with the particular glue I have, we have a broader tip that we can apply over a larger surface area. Now, this glue in particular does remain sticky when it's dry, so you do want to try and make sure that you only go up as far as the edges and no further. So I'm spreading out quite thinly, just so that we aren't getting too much seepage out the sides. And then we can do the other side as well and spread that out nicely. This glue is super sticky, so it grabs hold quite quick. So it's just something to bear in mind. Now you want to fold it over and check that your vertical score lines are lining up nicely at the top edge, and then everything else should follow through. You're going to burnish everything down well, and then you shouldn't get any of the warping and wrinkling that you typically associate with wet glues. And then we can fold out our tabs as such. So next to the bottom sections, and then finally it will wrap round to the front. So next we want to work onto our bottom tabs. So these are either side of that centre panel. And I'm going to quite liberally chop these down. So we want to take about half of that width away to make a shorter tab. And we're going to do this to both of them. You want to leave the front tab intact though. You can do the same on the other side. And you can miter those tabs as well, which is where we cut at an angle just to remove some of the bulk. And then this is how we keep our folds nice and accurate. And you want to do that for each of those middle tabs. Okay, so now what we want to do is we're going to glue those tabs that we've just cut down to our side tabs. So the big side tab here, like so. So I'm going to use a fine nozzle this time and just put a little bit on the side, spread it out with your nozzle, and do that for both sides of the first half of your toolbox. We're then going to wrap that round, and you want it so that the cut line of your side tab sits flush against the bottom panel. Press and hold it for a moment while that's grabbing. Then we can repeat for the other side. Line up, press and hold, wait for that glue to grab, and then we can burnish if you need to, and then move on to the next tab. You also want to make sure that if you have got any seepage at this point that you wipe it away before it dries. Now we're going to go onto these front tabs here. So this is where the piece wraps around to the front to form the front of our toolbox. I'm going to take the thinnest slice of these tabs, and that's just to make sure that we get a true right angle for that front. You're going to remove the waste from the inside edge of that tab, but not from the top. we're then going to tuck those inside and glue. So again, thin nozzle, tuck inside, then line up and press. So you want to make sure that that front cut edge of your side lines up with the fold of your front panel. And just take a little bit of time just making sure that that is absolutely perfect. And you're going to repeat that process for the opposite side and burnish all around just to make sure that everything is sticking down nicely. And by the magic of editing, we will have a completed box. So you want to make sure that all your folds are nicely pressed with burnishing and that everything is sitting flush. We can then cover these sections if you wish. To do that, get a contrasting piece of card and we are going to cut 3 panels that measure 9 by 6.5 centimetres or 3.5 by 2.5 inches. So we're cutting first at 2.5 inches, which is our width. So if I just show you very quickly on the box here, then we're going to go and cut again at 3.5 for the next 3 cuts. That leaves you a little over that you can use for decorating if you wish. So set that to one side for now. Or you might use it to strengthen a bit of fussy cutting, for instance. So now we need to stick on our 3 panels. So start with the bottom. Decide which side of your card you want to use. So for instance, I'm using pearlescent card. So one side has a solid colour, one has the pearlescent finish. Apply your glue. And I'm just going to use the spreader from the other end just to spread that out a little. We want to try and avoid having like lines of adhesive because otherwise when that dries it can actually show through pearlescent card. So just spread it out nicely. As long as you burnish down well when you're attaching it to your box, you shouldn't get any of that happening. Now I am also going to put a little bit of adhesive on my box itself just to make sure that those edges are sealed. Just take your time and line up your panel to your box. You're going to find that it's pretty accurate, this pattern, so you want to make sure that you get everything sitting as flush as possible. Very precise. Then using the rounded edge of your bone folder, we're going to press down inside, and then you want to make sure that also you press down that center fold as well, just so that if you bottom of your toolbox does have a bit of a rounded bottom, you're making sure it's making contact with that bottom panel for full adhesion then. And it's just going to give everything a neater finish. You can do the same for the side panels. So I'm going to stick them on actually untrimmed as such, so that we can then cut that point manually. Again, make sure that you glue the same side, and also around this top edge on your toolbox, just because obviously as we're trimming we don't want to glue everything on our green card, otherwise we're just going to get our scissors sticky and not achieve much. So line that up. Now you do have a little bit of wiggle room as we haven't spread that glue out, and you're going to need it just to get everything absolutely lined up. Now, because we've done that, you are going to want to make sure that you burnish down well with your bone folder, just to make sure that we get everything lying absolutely flat. If you have a flat edge bone folder, that's really going to help you spread that glue with the pressure. But if you have a rounded one like I'm using here, just make sure that you go over it quite a few times in a few different directions, just to make absolutely certain that glue is getting spread out. And then we can trim. And again, you can use these offcuts as part of your decoration if you wish. And there we go. And you want to repeat that for the other side. Okay, so once you've done that, you've got kind of your main panel coverings done, and that hides away our join in our toolbox. But now, depending on what you want to put in, you may want to add a little bit of a taller side, and we can do that by just cutting a thin strip from our original 12 by 12 sheet, or go for a contrasting card. We're going to take that strip and cut it at 6 inches. So then we have one for each side. And we're going to score these strips at 1 1/4 inches from both ends. Again, decide which side you want to use of your card, if you want to use the pearlescent or if you want to use the solid colour. Rotate and score again at the other end. And fold those score lines. And repeat for both strips. Okay, so with these strips, to make them sit absolutely flush into our toolbox, we're going to want to trim a little bit off. And that's just going to help it kind of navigate that fold. And then we can use the same glue to just stick that in. Take your time and make sure that you get this absolutely perfectly level. Then once you're happy, you can burnish the tab. So just using the bone folder, and we can use the straight edge of our bone folder just to make sure that we're pressing that glue tab right up to that front edge of the panel. The more we can burnish these tabs, the less likely we are to get any cockling or warping as the pieces dry. And if needed, just give them a little bit of a pinch just to get a nice neat edge. And then repeat for the other side. So just take your time for this section. And then we have our toolbox. So if you want to, you can punch a hole and tie some ribbon through, or you can essentially put in a handle if you want to. It really is up to you. And then it's ready for our decoration. So that will be coming in part 2 when we finish off our little toolbox. So you just want to make sure that all the excess is off, and then you want to allow it to set to one side and dry completely. And make sure that everything is perfect. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again in part 2. And we'll be decorating with decorative panels and also our embellishments.